Good morning, writers. How are we doing?
Good.
Wonderful. We've all written so many good stories, and I love reading what you write. Your ideas are clear, and they're really interesting. So what I'd like us to work on today is writing leads with pizzazz, because what I've noticed is that although we're writing good stories, we kind of start them the same way every time. And good writers, we like to write in different ways and start our stories differently so that we can grab an audience's attention. Now, I wrote leads with pizzazz on the board. Whisper to your neighbor and describe what you think pizzazz might be.
Something fun.
Something funky.
Ooh.
Wow, I heard a lot of good things. I heard something funky, something fun. And you're right, pizzazz is something that we do that's kind of unique and makes our writing really interesting. So we've already read a few books in class that I think show this really well and that I'd like for us to review and then maybe use in our own writing. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. And then after we're done doing that, you're going to go back through your own writing and then see if there's anything that you can incorporate from what we talked about today. So now before we start our books, we all remember our anchor chart procedure, so we're all sitting crisscross applesauce and we're actively listening. So your eyes and your belly buttons are facing toward Miss Jamie. So now before we start our books also, I want you guys to brainstorm and decide what is a lead.
The lead is like the start of
The beginning.
the beginning of the story or paragraph.
Can someone raise their hand and tell me what you were talking about with your neighbor? Allison?
We said that it was the beginning of a story.
Right. Leads are beginning of a story. There's something that we use to tell our audience what our story is going to be about and grab their attention. Now, I want you to turn to your neighbors again and discuss why it's important that we have an interesting lead and what makes our leads interesting to grab our audience's attention.
It makes the readers interested in what we have to do.
I don't want to get bored.
And what do we talk about? Abby, can you tell me something that you talked about with your neighbor?
I said that it makes the audience interested right away.
Yep, grabs the attention. We want our audiences to be interested in what we have to say. So now we're going to use our books that we've already read in class so we know what happens in them. And we're just going to read the first pages. And I want you to tell me and think about with your partners why these introductions or leads are so interesting and grab our attention. So we remember Alexander and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. So our story starts off like this. I went to sleep with gum in my mouth, and now there's gum in my hair. And when I got out of bed this morning, I tripped on the skateboard, and by mistake, I dropped my sweater in the sink where the water was running, and I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. Now, if we hadn't already read this book in class, wiggle your fingers and show me whether you'd want to read on to the next page. Yeah, wow, a lot of fingers. What makes that lead so interesting? Why do we want to read more? What does the author do?
We want to know what's going to happen next.
Right, there's a lot of different words. It's really detailed, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
He really describes his day and what's going on with it. So I'll color code our books and why we like each one. So we have Alexander. We said there's lots of details, right?
Yes.
So although we don't want to write a whole lot, sometimes it's really good to have a lot of detailed, good words to grab our readers' attention so that they want to know what happens next. The second book that I want us to read the first page of is from Wemberly Worried. So our story starts off like this. Wemberly worried about everything. That's the very first page. Can you pat your head if you're kind of wondering why he might be worried and if you want to find out? Yeah, me too. It is pretty interesting. It's kind of the opposite of Alexander, isn't it? Why do we want to know more here? How did these authors start the story?
Because it was so simple.
Simple. Allison, what about you? What do you think?
I don't know why she worries.
Yeah, me too. So it's simple. There actually isn't a lot of writing. And it kind of makes us wonder what's going to happen next. That grabs my attention. I want to know what's going to happen next. So that's something else we can use in our writing, is just start off with something really simple that makes our readers want to know what's going to happen. And then the third book that we're going to use is Diary of a Worm. And that book starts out like this. March 20th. Mom says there are 3 things I should always remember. 1, the earth gives us everything we need. 2, when we dig tunnels, we help take care of the earth. And 3, never bother Daddy when he's eating the newspaper. So that's another interesting way we can start a story. Tap your nose if you noticed that they started that story like a diary entry. Yep, I noticed that too. And that's another way that we could actually start our story, is as if we're writing in our own diary. Rub your belly if you have a diary at home. Yep, I like to write down my ideas and what happened during my day. So Diary of a Worm. So Dear Diary, that's another way that we can start our stories. Now, I'm going to write just a quick little sentence introduction on the board, and I want you to think about if my lead is good or not, and if there's anything we can do to change it, and brainstorm some of your own ideas. So chit-chat with your neighbor while I'm writing about different ways that you think you'd like to start stories, or if there's anything that we use from these authors that you might like.
Sometimes I like to start my story with questions.
I like a deer tire.
Questions make people think.
So I wrote, I woke up and I was really tired. Is that a sentence that you think you might want to start a story with? Does that really grab your attention? No, it's not too great. What are some of the ways we talked about that I could maybe put more pizzazz in this, make it something interesting that wants to grab your attention?
Maybe more detail.
Maybe more detail, like in Alexander, right? I could definitely add more words, more detail. We have any other ideas of something that I could do to make this more interesting and add pizzazz to it?
Make it more personal, like the Dear Diary.
More personal, like a diary? You're right. I could definitely start it like that. Right, good job.
Maybe you could say why you're tired.
I could say why. Again, I could add more details. Practice makes perfect, so as we keep writing our stories, we'll start to get the hang of it. So now, when we go back to our seats to write independently, look at the last story that you were working on and see if you can maybe incorporate some of the ideas that our mentor authors used into your own writing. And if you can't, that's okay. We don't always have to use the strategy that we covered today. Make sure you're going back and looking at your writing and working on your old work, and just see if one of these strategies will work for you. Good writers are always rereading and trying to make their writing more interesting for their audiences and grabbing their attention right away with a good lead. So now, if you have blue eyes, go back to your desk and start working on your writing. If you have green eyes, then if you have brown eyes, go back to your seat.